Today we can discuss about bryophytes. Study about bryophytes are called bryology. It's a branch like phycology, mycology, pteridology, gymnology, etc. Bryophytes, they are non-vascular plants. Non-vascular means they don't have xylem and the phloem. Vascular tissues are absent. And they are called the amphibians of the plant kingdom because they need the presence of water to complete their life cycle. During the sexual reproduction, they need the presence of water for the anthrozoids to swim and reach near the egg that is enclosed inside the archegonium. That's why bryophytes are called amphibians of the plant kingdom. They are most primitive and very simple forms. And the bryophytes are actually in between algae and pteridophytes. So they are advanced than that of the algae, but they are showing many primitive characters to pteridophytes. Among the bryophytes, nearly 960 genera are reported in the world, and they are coming under about 24,000 species. So 24,000 species under 960 genera identified in bryophytes. And the place of occurrence is the humid, shady localities, especially in high altitudes. And mainly the bryophytes are grouped into three. One is moss, the second is liverwort, and third is hornwort. About the life cycle, they have two phases. One is gametophytic and other is sporophytic phase. Morphologically, two distinct phases. Gametophyte is the plant body, and the sporophyte, that is dependent on gametophyte. Sporophyte is dependent on gametophyte. Usually in the primitive forms of bryophytes, the gametophyte is prostrate and thalloid. But in advanced one, like mosses, the plant body is differentiated into root, stem and leaves. They are not true root, true stem and true leaves. They have root-like, stem-like and leaf-like structures in advanced forms of bryophytes. And the rhizoids are filamentous, then they are present for fixation and absorption. Two types of rhizoids are there. One is unicellular unbranched and second is multicellular and branched. And marcantials, they have multicellular scales, and that is to protect the thallus and also for absorption of water and nutrients from the substrate. And one peculiarity of bryophyte is the plant body is entirely made up of parenchyma. You cannot see collenchyma, sclerenchyma in the plant body, and the vascular tissues are completely absent. About the reproduction, bryophytes are showing two types of reproduction. One is vegetative and other is sexual. Vegetative reproduction, there are many methods for vegetative reproduction. One is by death and decay of the older parts. Second is by the formation of adventitious branches from the gametophyte. And also you can see gemma formation, protonema, bulbils, tubers, etc. Third method is the fragmentation. Fragmentation of the thallus into small bits, and each bit can develop into new plant. So these are the main type of vegetative reproduction in bryophytes. By death and decay, then formation of adventitious branches, and also fragmentation. And the sexual reproduction, again, it is oogamous. Oogamous. It's an advanced type of reproduction. And the sex organs are complex and they are multicellular also. And sex organs are of two types. One is male sex organ and other is female. Male sex organ is the antheridium and the female is archegonium. And the antheridium is stalked, globose or elliptical in shape. It is covered by thick-walled sterile jacket, and inside the antheridium you can see fertile cells called anthrocytes. And these anthrocytes are later giving rise to biflagellate motile anthrozoid. That is the antheridium. Whereas female reproductive structure is archegonium. It is flask-shaped structure with a swollen base and a narrow neck, and the neck region is called the basal region is having venter, and it is called the venter, and the elongated distal part is called neck. Venter encloses egg or oospore, and the venter and the neck surrounded by a sterile jacket made up of sterile cells. That is the male and the female reproductive structure in general in bryophytes. Then about the fertilization needs water. Presence of water is necessary for the anthrozoids to move, and the anthrozoids move and enter into the neck of the archegonium, and many anthrozoids may enter into the neck, but only one is permitted to come down and fuse with that of the egg that is seen in the venter to form the zygote. That is fertilization. Then about post-fertilization stages, zygote represents the beginning of the sporophytic generation. That means diploid, sporophytic generation is diploid and gametophytic generation is haploid. And in the case of bryophytes, gametophytes are gametophytes are totally independent, and the sporophyte is dependent on gametophyte. Gametophyte is independent and sporophyte is dependent on gametophyte. Gametophyte is haploid and the sporophyte is diploid. And the starting of the sporophytic generation is the zygote. Zygote is the beginner of sporophytic generation. It is diploid. First, the zygote undergo a transverse division to form two cells, upper and lower, and the upper cell is developing into embryo. And from the embryo, you can see the development of sporophyte without the differentiation of without any further differentiation, And the sporophyte completely depends on gametophyte, I told you. And the sporophyte may be represented either as capsule, or it may be again differentiated into food, seed and capsule. And the only capsule is seen in the primitive forms of bryophytes like Rixia. But food, seed and capsule are seen in mosses like Funaria. And usually meiosis is taking place inside the capsule. And the sporogenous tissues will develop into spores. Spores are usually non-motile and they are disseminated by wind. And the favorable condition for the spores to develop into young gametophyte or to a protonema is the humid condition. And usually the protonema is having many buds, and these buds will develop into erect gametophyte. That is usually happening. About the alternation of generation, the bryophytes are showing a typical alternation of generation where you can see a gametophytic generation alternates with sporophytic generation. And the gametophyte develops from haploid spores. So we can say spores are the starting of gametophytic generation, and that will produce the sporophyte. And the gametophytes are usually bearing the sex organs, that is antheridium and archegonium, inside which the gametes are produced, male gamete and female gamete respectively. And the gametes represent the last stage of the gametophytic generation. And the male and the female gamete fuse to form the zygote, that is diploid, which is the starting of the sporophytic generation. And the zygote then develop into sporogonium. And inside the sporogonium, sporogenous tissues are there, and they are undergoing mitosis. The sporogenous tissues are undergoing meiosis, and you can see haploid spores are developed, and on germination these spores will form the gametophyte. This is the eye cycle. You can see the gametophyte generation, and gametes are formed. They will undergo fusion fertilization. Zygote is formed. It is the starting of the sporophyte generation, asexual reproduction. That is, spores are formed, and they are undergoing meiosis reduction. See, by the meiosis, the spores are formed. Then again, you can see the life cycle is complete. Then you should know what is apospory and apogamy. Bryophytes are exhibiting both apospory and apogamy. Apospory means gametophyte develops from vegetative cells of sporophyte, not from spores. That is apospory. And aposporous gametophytes resemble the normal gametophyte, but they possess diploid number of chromosomes. That's the difference. They resemble the normal gametophyte, but they have diploid number of chromosomes. And what is apogamy? Sporophyte develops from gametophyte without gamete fusion. Sporophyte developing from the gametophyte without gamete fusion is called apogamy. These two are very common in the bryophytes. And about the classification, according to Eichler, there are the bryophytes are classified into two groups or into two classes. That is at the beginning of 18th century. One is Hepatic, then Muscae. Hepatic, you see, in which the liverworts and hornworts present. Muscae contains only mosses. But later, Engler and Pruntel, that is at the beginning of 19th century, they divided the classes into three orders. Engler divided these three classes, the classes into three orders. That is two classes. One is Hepatic and other is Muscae. Hepatic is divided into three orders. One is Mercantile, then Jungermanniales and Anthocerotiales. Similarly, Muscae is divided into Sphagnales, Antriales and Bryales. And according to how Anthocerotiales have given the status of class from the order. So, three classes: Hepatic, Anthocerote and Muscae. According to how the order Anthocerotiales have uplifted to the rank of class by how. So, there are three classes: Hepatic, Anthocerote and Muscae. And Rothmeiler have given new names for these classes. Hepatic is called as Hepaticopsida by Rothmeiler, and Anthocerote is called as Anthoceropsida, and Muscae is called as Bryopsida. So, Hepaticopsida, Anthoceropsida and Bryopsida. The current system of classification, the division Bryophytes, divided into three classes: Hepaticopsida, Anthoceropsida and Bryopsida. The class Hepaticopsida is divided into 6 orders: Spherocarpales, Mercantiales, Metzgeriales, Jungermanniales, Calobriales and Tachachiales. Then Anthoceropsida is divided into the order Anthocerotiales, and the Bryopsida is divided into 3 subclasses. One is Sphagnobrya, Antriobrya and also Eubrya. Sphagnobrya, the most important one is Sphagnales. Antriobrya, Antriales, and Eubrya, you can have to study Funerales and Polytrichales. Polytrichum and Funaria. Okay. Then about the class Hepaticopsida, it is called liverworts, has 6 orders, 9 families and almost 2,225 genera under 8,900 species. Important characters of Hepaticopsida: ventrally flattened thallus, that is gametophyte, that is thalloid or foliose, and differentiate into axis and leaves. In foliose forms, leaves are devoid of midrib and arranged in they are arranged in 2 or 3 rows on the axis. Whereas sex and also the sex organs, they develop from superficial cells and they are dorsal or terminal in position, sex organs. These are the important features of Hepaticopsida. And the hepatic Opsida, the sporophyte may be simple or differentiated into capsule and foot, or into capsule or foot and seta. And the sporophytic complexity depends upon gametophyte for its nutritional requirements. So how the sporophyte is nutritionally depending on the gametophyte, that determines their attachment. And the archisporium or sporogenous tissues develop from the endothecium of sporogonium. That's very important. Archisporium is developing, along the sporogenous tissues are developing from the endothecium of sporogonium. And wall of the sporogonium is usually one or several layers, and it is devoid of stomata. And the dehiscence of the sporogonium is irregular. And about the Anthoceropsida, they are called hornworts, include about single order, 2 families, 6 genera, and 300 species. Important characters: dorsiventrally flattened thalloid gametophyte, remain attached to a substratum by simple and smooth walled rhizoids, and the thallus is homogeneous. That means it is not differentiated into assimilatory and the photosynthetic zone and the storage region. Then sex organs, sex organs in the Anthoceropsida embedded in the gametophytic tissue on the dorsal side, and the antheridia develop from the hypodermal cells and archegonia from superficial cells. And the sporogonium, it is elongated and cylindrical. It is differentiated into foot, seta, and capsule. And there is a meristematic region also. That meristematic region is intercalary in position, and they are active throughout growing season. The intercalary, the meristematic region. Then wall of the capsule is made up of 4 or 6 cells, and they are 4 to 6 cell thick, and they are provided with stomata. Then about the central sterile portion of the sporogonian tissue is forming the columella, which is surrounded by a sporogenous tissue and spores. So that is the peculiarity. The central sterile portion of the sporogonium forms the columella, which is surrounded by sporogenous tissue and spores. And the sporogenous tissue develops from amphithecium, and it arches over columella. It is arching over columella. And the class Bryopsida, it is otherwise called mosses, consists of about 28 families, 660 genera, and nearly 15,000 species. The gametophyte of the plant body is differentiated into foot, seta, and capsule. And the leaves are spirally arranged, and the rhizoids are multicellular, branched, and obliquely septate. And leaves are arranged around the axis in 3 to 8 rows and have prominent midrib also. Then about the sex organs of Bryopsida, they are apical and they develop from the superficial cells of the gametophore, and the sporophyte is differentiated to foot, seta, and capsule, and capsule wall consists of many layers, and they are chlorenchymatous, and it is provided with stomata. These are the indications to show that they are becoming independent in the next group, that is in pteridophytes. And the sporogenous tissue and the columella develop from outer layers of endothecium. So that's all about the introduction of bryophytes.